Because of all the anti-Christian films, music, and jokes that have permeated Hollywood the last 30 years?
What anti-Christian media?
What is a woman?
There's a very simple answer to that. Is your masculinity so fragile that you cannot just call someone by their preferred pronouns and move on?
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching Charlie Kirk taking on a woke student on the topic of LGBTQ and gender ideology primarily, but with other subjects brought up as well. So with that, let's get into it.
Hey, Charlie. So I'm a student here. Just going to start off and say that I disagree with you on a lot of things, and specifically I'd like to ask about how you and the people you associate with, the people you provide a platform for, often say things that are a lot of rhetoric that's definitely against the LGBT community, like the comedian on here earlier who was making fun of a trans person. And I'm just wondering, how do you feel that this kind of rhetoric, pushed primarily by the right, maybe influences the phenomenon that are observed, such as LGBT people having higher rates of suicide? How do you think that that might play into this?
Not at all. They should get tougher. Really? Life is tough. Let me ask the question. Are a bunch of Christians committing suicide because of all the anti-Christian films, music, and jokes that have permeated Hollywood the last 30 years?
What anti-Christian media?
Like everything? How about the entire... You cannot watch a Simpsons episode, a Family Guy season, a Netflix special, Hulu special without, oh, this pastor is unfaithful, one-off joke about the hypocrisy of the church, or, oh, this Catholic priest is a pedophile, or, oh my goodness, they're covering for their licentiousness. It is widespread. It is embedded into the fiber of the creative code of Hollywood. So I will ask the question, has the bullying, the slander, and the mockery of, how about conservative America? Watch Bill Maher. They'll make fun of deplorables. They're awful people. They cling to their guns and their religion in Walmart. Have we seen an increase in suicide of conservative Christians because they're made fun of so much?
Do you think that maybe if you think this does...
No, you got to answer the question, because it's either like widespread mockery leads to suicide. Have we seen that connection in other places?
Well, then why? Why is...
So hold on, guys, hold on. Why are trans people committing suicide so much?
Why?
Because they have deep-seated mental problems to begin with.
Or because they're not accepted by people like you.
What anti-Christian media, hey? Well, I'm actually glad that he went there, because the fact that he said that doesn't suggest that he's been living under a rock. What it suggests, rather, is that he is totally and utterly desensitized and oblivious to this, which means the plan is working.
Media Matters for America is a non-profit liberal watchdog group that has the ear of not only the mainstream media, but also the Obama administration.
Media Matters, in its application to the IRS, outright, in its very first paragraphs, declares that it's going to be an anti-Christian organization. Interestingly, though, in their public mission statement, Media Matters makes no mention of the fact that it intends to target the Christian ideology.
Let's just start with the fact that Christianity is the only one of the three Abrahamic religions that you can openly mock and insult without the risk of cancellation, having your platform taken down, or even being physically attacked for it. I mean, people openly mock Jesus Christ as if this is like a trendy thing to do. Look at Joy Behar on The View.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's different.
That's different. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct.
Bill Maher does it. Various different singers have done it, and more.
It's fun to laugh at QAnon with the baby-eating lizard people and the pedophile pizza parlors, but have you ever read the book of Revelation?
Furthermore, if you want to be one of the cool kids in the Eyes Wide Shut club in Hollywood, you're not allowed to be a Christian conservative.
But I have had moments where I was on stage receiving an award in front of my peers in Hollywood. And there were people in the crowd that I have prayed with before dinners many times. And when I thank God, I saw some of those people go to clap, but then notice that, whoa, it's going to be a bad thing on my resume, and then sit back on their hands.
And the ones who do have the balls to be forthright about it, like Mel Gibson, for example, are shunned. And lastly, and the most obvious and egregious version of this, is the constant satanic imagery that happens in music videos and at awards ceremonies and more. This imagery is obviously very intentional, and it's not just artists looking to be edgy or whatever. No, it's actually a lot deeper than that. And to be honest, they've done such a great job, because now this mockery is just a part of life, and no one even bats an eyelid. And then people ask questions like, what anti-Christian media? Try saying what people say about Christianity about the other religions and just see what happens. On to the next part.
What did you say? I can't hear you when they're clapping.
It's because people I mean, society in general. You mentioned earlier that bill about making it so that a school will not have to tell parents about the kids being trans. That's because many people live in a household in which they would not be accepted for that.
They shouldn't be accepted at age 15.
Really?
If you are a boy and you come home and think you're a girl, you have a deep-seated mental problem that needs treatment, not hormones. You need a counselor, not a surgeon. You need a parent, not a groomer. If you come home and say, as a 15-year-old boy, and say, I think I'm a girl, you need someone to say, I love you enough not to accept your lie. So let me ask you a question. If someone came to you and said, I am anorexic and I'm going to want liposuction, should we give it to them?
If they're an adult, sure. Wait,
That is,
I don't know exactly what that involves.
Hold on. So do you know what liposuction is?
I know it's a fat reduction surgery. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, so someone who's anorexic thinks they're fat when in reality they're starving themselves to death.
Sorry.
That's okay. So let's just, I want to make sure we're morally clear here.
No, it would be important to recognize that that's not a solution, but it's also...
Oh, okay. So it's okay to intervene and say that certain medical interventions are bad for the patient.
Hold on. I think there's a distinction between medically transitioning and accepting different gender roles. Gender roles are definitely not based in biology. They've changed so much over the centuries.
Oh, no. You're changing the topic. We're talking specifically about, you mentioned parental consent, how we're mocking trans people, how it's hurting them.
I was not talking about biological transitioning. I'm talking about people identifying...
You can't biologically transition. You can only castrate yourself.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
transitioning is a fiction.
Identity.
No matter how much surgery you get, no matter how many drugs you take, you're still a man, you're still a woman, period. You stay the way that you are. You can look different. Why? You can't change your chromosomes.
Yeah, but that's not what defines a man or a woman.
But so let's get to it. Hold on. What is a woman? What is a woman?
There's a very simple answer to that.
Say that again.
There's a very simple answer. A woman is someone who identifies as such.
Guys, you can't answer the question.
I did answer the question.
Hold on.
That's an answer. How's that not an answer?
If you, in freshman introductory to logic, if you said, please define a door is a thing that looks like a door. They say no.
How else would you define it? You define a door.
X chromosomes, an adult female with the capacity to menstruate, have birth, a womb, and a uterus, and a vagina.
So you choose that definition.
It's not choosing.
That is a choice.
It is.
Language is a choice. Language is not based on biology.
So
you choose words.
Before we descend too far into your postmodernist chaos, let me ask you another question. In the human species, what categories are there between male and female?
I'm not sure what you're asking. You mean like traits?
In the human species, what other categories are there in addition to male and female?
I'm not entirely sure. There's plenty. It changes rapidly. I don't know the whole list. There's intersex. People are born with parts
so has
that
there
are
ever been an
ambiguous.
intersex person that has the capacity to impregnate themselves? No. So they either have sex organs of more the female or the male, and intersex is a deformity. So it's saying like this, for example, in a normal human being, you're born with 2 arms and 2 legs. Okay. If someone's born without a leg, we don't say, oh my goodness, that changes the entire human species. And it's an exception to the rule, not the rule itself. And so intersex is a deformity of a rule. And the rule is very clear that there is male and female. Even intersex people will either have the capacity to procreate from male with semen or with women with an egg. So the question I will go back to, biologically, socially, culturally, environmentally, whatever you want to call it, what other categories besides male and female in the animal kingdom of Homo sapiens are there?
Biologically, you could say that there are essentially no more, but that's biologically. And if you think about...
So now we're getting somewhere.
We're talking about if you identify as a man or woman, that is a choice of how you want to employ yourself in society.
Now we're talking.
Why is that determined about whether you have a penis or a vagina? Why does that affect what role you should have and how you should be seen by other people?
Before we get to roles, do you agree there are fundamental differences to how men and women are wired biologically and chemically?
Very few.
Very few?
Yes.
Okay, so...
Guys, just a quick reminder to smash that like button before we go any further. And if you like this content, if you want to be a part of the community, subscribe to the channel. Back to the clips.
How important is, let me ask a question. How important is testosterone and estrogen differences?
Important to what?
How about muscle mass, bone density,
Why is that what's important?
Cardiovascular, but hold on. Let's just say differences of male and female differences of needs, wants, desires, attitudes, traits. Why is it that females like certain musical artists and men gravitate more towards the UFC? Why is that a Taylor Swift concert is 99% female and a UFC event is 99% male? Were they told from a young age, you must like combat sports and you must like pop singers that only sing a certain way? Certainly. Or is it that maybe there's something biological that resonates more with what Taylor Swift is presenting and more with the honestly brutal hand-to-hand combat that you'd see at the UFC?
How can you not recognize that any of this is social? Pop music, all music is a social phenomenon. That's not rooted in our biology. How can you say that a certain genre of music is inherently masculine?
That's fair. So then answer me a question. Can you point to a single instance of when there was a controlled variable study of when a child was given a different gender than the sex one, than what they were given at sex, and they were able to live a full, mature, and flourishing life?
What do you mean given a gender?
Meaning, for example, do you know about the John Money experiment where they had identical twins and one of the kids tragically had basically his genitalia seared off, and John Money, do you know who John Money is?
No, I'm not familiar with this experiment.
Okay. You're just barely dipping into the waters of the trans toxicity, my friend, which is John Money is the New Zealand 1950s, 1960 theorist who came up with this idea of gender. So before John Money, there was sex and personality. So, for example, we have 2 sexes, 0 genders, unlimited personalities. John Money said, no, gender is this whole new concept, and anybody can pick their gender at any time. And so what he did is there was twins. One of the kids seared off his, genitalia, said, I'm going to raise this kid as a girl. And the kid was a whole life had higher testosterone rates, wanted to always play with trucks and would say, no, you're a girl, you're a girl, you're a girl. And despite all the social phenomenon, he ended up being told at age 16, you actually were a biological boy. He said it was the most important thing anyone ever told me because I knew I was a boy my entire life and everyone was telling me I was a girl. And that John Money experiment, the guy who came up with the idea of gender itself, participated in the greatest clinical self-own in scientific history, where even he could not get a tabula rasa, a blank slate of a child who was saying, hey, you're a girl, we're going to raise you as a girl. It turns out that boys will be boys and girls will be girls, regardless of how much you try to change them. Go ahead.
So guys, for those of you who have watched What is a Woman, for example, which should be necessary viewing, you'll know that Matt Walsh has done some quite good work in bringing to light the character of John Money, a very significant individual in the history of gender ideology. And Charlie's kind of alluded to this, but this was a guy who was taking not only intersex children, but also normal children and having them raised as the opposite gender for scientific experiments. And he was monitoring the progress of these children over the years and the sort of things that he was doing to them. I'll spare you the finer details. And the most famous case is David Reimer, who went on to take his own life.
You're always going to see people that are going to say, well, the Dave Reimer case could have been successful. I'm living proof. And if you're not going to take my word as gospel, because I have lived through it, who else are you going to listen to? Who else is there? I've lived through it.
Now, just how broken did that man look? And you'd think that this would be a lesson learned, right? Well, the problem is that John Money would actually fit in really well in many circles today. There are children all over America and other Western countries that are being told by their weak, pathetic parents that they are able to choose their genders.
We were really raising her just to be open, to be however she wants to be without any need for a label or identity.
I wear like boy clothes, or I wear girl clothes, or sometimes I wear like a girl shirt or boy pants.
And big shock, guys, many biological girls are saying that they're actually boys and vice versa. I'm sure that this has nothing to do with the conditioning of their woke parents. Woke parents, by the way, who will use these children to virtue signal and will parade them around like a big woke trophy, demonstrating how truly progressive they really are.
This is Ari, Gwendolyn, and Brinifer. They are in a polyamorous relationship.
We have a 2-year-old anti-gender baby and a 10-year-old who is non-binary.
Now, any rational person who sees this will understand that this is child abuse and this should be treated as such. This is something that will certainly derail the development of that child and will most definitely cause them a lifetime of unnecessary suffering. But this is just the age of narcissism that we live in, and I take absolutely zero pleasure in saying that we are going to pay a very significant price for this in the decades to come. And unfortunately, this is what happens when you collectively part way with the truth as a society. This is what happens when we don't call things out because we're too scared to offend anybody. At the end of the day, the truth is the truth. The truth is what creates order, and the truth is what these kids should be learning from a young age, and these college kids for that matter. On to the last.
That's certainly an interesting case study. However, a single anecdote is not data. It doesn't reflect an overall trend. And I'd like to point out that you mentioned this idea of feeling like they were trapped in the wrong gender's body, which is how millions of trans youth throughout the world
So I'm
feel.
glad you mentioned that. So can you sometimes feel things that are not true?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what's going on with trans youth. They're feeling something that is not true.
Why
For
is
example,
it not true? Why is it not?
Because it's not correlated with their biological reality.
So-
For example, they believe that, oh my goodness, I'm really a boy, I'm really a girl. Okay, well, where's the evidence of that? And by the way, the majority of young people that say that they're quote unquote trans are autistic, they have behavioral type issues, they have underlying health conditions, depression, suicidal ideation, anxiety. To go back to your original question, why do so many trans people end up A, either committing violence or B, committing suicide? Number one, they don't get the actual watchful waiting type treatment that is necessary, that's been proven successful by clinicians like Dr. Miriam Grossman over the last 30 years. You know what watchful waiting is? Instead of acting as if puberty is the problem, puberty is the solution. When a 15-year-old girl says, oh my goodness, I feel I'm a boy, we say, okay, let's wait it out. Let's wait 9 months, and maybe you might feel differently. Every girl in this audience will tell you there was a time when they were growing up where they did not feel comfortable in their body, but they grew through it. And praise God we did not give every girl in this audience testosterone because they felt uncomfortable with their body. Every single girl felt that way. Secondly, on top of that, the idea that somehow we're going to give a false hope to a 16-year-old, that chemicals are going to make you feel better, and then just another surgery, and then just another intervention. It leads you down this rabbit trail where you are a shell of a human being, where you no longer have the parts you were born with. God forbid if you have regret like Chloe Cole, who's just right behind you, by the way, who was sold that lie, and she may never be able to have children again because of what the trans industry has done. And Chloe, I hope you sue them for $1 billion and put them all in prison for what they did for you. Can we at least agree on this? If it can't be reversed and young minds make bad decisions, shouldn't we at least wait till they're 18 before we give them drugs?
100%.
Okay, we agree on that then.
Yes, I agree on that. However,
okay,
well,
that is a strong moral agreement.
You're making a little straw man here. You're assuming that the majority of these cases are young people who are being forced to transition either through surgery or hormone replacement. In the vast majority of these cases, that's not what it is. It's people either as an adult transitioning or when they're young, they're choosing to identify differently, to dress differently, to present themselves differently, not necessarily to go through a surgery or hormones. That's the minority of it. And you're confusing
if a man who's a lunatic who thinks he's a woman wants to wear a dress in his home, that's never been the concern. You know what the concern is? Making me call him a woman by force and firing me or somebody from a job if I don't use the right pronoun. I have no problem if somebody has mental problems in their living room alone. So be it. Dress as Cinderella, dress as a wolf, not the problem. The issue is when you storm the HR department and say, Sam used the wrong pronouns, and I think they should be disciplined for that. And now we all have to use these pronoun markers in our bio to cater to a fringe minority that's so fragile, that is so weak, that you can't possibly tolerate the idea of somebody mispronouncing you or misgendering. Like, grow up. Like, welcome to civil, mature adult society. Sometimes, how about you go be strong enough to go confront the other person and say, use my own pronouns? But no, at the root of the LGBT movement, the T stands for tyranny. And it's, you have to use my pronouns. You have to allow me to teach your children transgender pornography. You have to allow me to allow myself into your life. It is not live and let live. At the root of trans ideology is live and let us rule. And we are currently living under the enemy occupation of the trans zealots. That if you misgender somebody, you could lose your entire career. That if you drive over a pride flag, it is a hate crime punished by the Department of Justice. But if you burn an American flag, they call it free speech. We have an entire month that is dedicated towards protecting LGBTQ pride. It's not live and let live. If it was, then they would do their own thing, we'd do our own thing. Instead, it is a grooming, proselytizing strategy of people that need to recruit because they can't reproduce.
Is your masculinity so fragile that you cannot just call someone by their preferred pronouns and move on? You're willing to put away all of that?
We agreed on the children thing. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I was willing to give this kid the benefit of the doubt as a confused and ignorant indoctrinee of a broken system. However, when you start saying things like, is your masculinity so fragile that you can't just say somebody's pronouns? Really? You think it's a picture of masculinity to be walking around and calling purple-haired tofu monsters Z and Zer and them, affirming somebody's second and third spirit and their pixie self? If I do that, will I be able to prove to you that my masculinity is solid and it's not fragile?
I am not gay. I have relationships with women.
When you hear that come out of a biological male's mouth, you just think to yourself, my guy needs to go out there, play some sport, go get a part-time job on a building site, get around some other men and grow some hairs on your chest, son. This kid has been totally feminized to the point where he's actually started adopting the language of the female.
Gay!
Anyways, guys, that's it from me. As per usual, smash those links below. And if you guys would like to subscribe to the channel, if you're getting value from it, click right here. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.